Hey guys, today I want to talk about exterior facades. What is a facade? It is the exterior covering of a house that is primarily cosmetic. It has some functional features, but I'll get to those in a minute. For the most part, it is to dress up the outside of your house. As we're at the project I'm calling the Fort Worth build here, we are in process of doing exterior work right now on the house. And so exterior facades consist of things like siding, brick, stone, stucco. So this house is getting a few of those. It's getting stone, it's getting stucco, and it has a little bit of siding in some areas. So I'm standing behind a wall that is going to get stone. And so as I turn around and look behind me, you see these big old pallets of stone here. We've got a whole bunch of them for this house. And certain aspects of the front elevation, some of the columns, other areas are getting stone. Other portions of the house are stucco. And then we have a few spots that are going to have some vertical wood siding on the front. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of those, what type of materials I like the best, what the different characteristics of each materials are. So here's a little info on exterior facades. Let's start first with siding. We've probably all seen siding throughout our lives. It's a very common exterior facade to put on a house. So what is siding? Well, generic term for a covering an exterior facade that is generally wood, products like masonite, which were kind of wood products, all the way to things that we use now like cement-based, cement composite siding. So this house is getting some true wood siding on it, some vertical cedar pieces, just a few of them on the front elevation that are meant to just kind of emphasize the architectural style of the home, and those will be stained. Those are actually a beautiful type of exterior siding, but they are also the most expensive and the highest maintenance. So I'm going to go through the types of sidings available, how they're used, what you're kind of dealing with on price and maintenance. That first thing I mentioned, what I would call real wood, you're putting up a cedar, a Doug fir, something like that, that then gets stained. Those are often incredibly beautiful looking. You see cedar face garage doors all the time and all that. However, anytime you have real wood that is stained on a house, that is the highest maintenance product I think you can put on the exterior facade of a house. The reason is UV and weather breaks down the stain color and it starts to fade. So last house I had built for myself had a lot of cedar on it, and I'm not kidding, after about every summer, if not definitely every two, it needed to be restained. So very high maintenance compared to even things like paint. We all know paint over time is going to have to be repainted, but it lasts a lot longer than a stained piece of wood that sits out in the sun. So for example, this house I'm at, it does have some of that cedar on the front of the house, which is facing more or less east. So it is going to get a lot of UV. They will need to maintain that over time. We have our painting contractor do the best, stain and seal that they can on it, but nothing's going to stop the UV from lightening that over time. And that's effectively all that's happening. It is fading, it's light, it's getting lighter. So if you've ever seen, let's say, a split rail wood fence that gets, put out somewhere and it's stained and looks beautiful, go back and look at it a year later, it's usually faded pretty substantially because it's getting full sun all the time. So that's one of the downsides of real wood siding. The next type of siding material is what I call masonite material. It is a material that is a manufactured product. It's a wood-based product. They say it has a 50-year life. A lot of us have seen in quicker than 15 years, it does start to rot, to chip out. And so it is a product you see the big production track builders use a lot over the years because it's relatively inexpensive. Usually that's just a horizontal lap siding, so it's just one piece laps over another. It does get painted then, while they do make pre-painted versions of that material. As a builder, I generally would not recommend that just because material gets dropped on site, it gets dragged around, it gets hammered, so it's going to get chipped. And because that pre-painted stuff is painted, then you've got a lot of chips and damage on it that you're going to have to go back and touch up anyway. So in my opinion, better to have it all put on, prepped, and then painted. So that type of material was popular for years and years. We have personally switched over to a different type of material. So the only type of siding that I use on houses now, excluding the stained wood type of product, is, when we're talking about a painted siding, is a cement fiber-based product. So there's manufacturers out there like Hardie and Allura, and they are companies that basically make the same thing. It is a cement-based siding product. You can get it in a textured finish, so it looks kind of like wood. You can get it in a smooth finish if you're doing a more contemporary home, and it does not rot. So it's all we use on our homes now when we have painted siding in areas. We saw a big explosion a few years back of the modern farmhouse look, and so we've done a lot of that where entire homes are siding. They're board and batten a lot of times, maybe with some horizontal lap siding. And that is the product to use if you can afford to use it. It is a little more expensive, but it's really become the gold standard because, again, it does not rot. You do have to paint it, but it does not rot. The paint will last for a long time, so again, you're only painting every several years when it comes to that kind of siding. So a cement-based siding, either Hardie or Allura, is what we want to use if we are doing a siding product on a house. So if we are doing siding on a house, it's going to be applied almost directly to the exterior sheathing. This house has zip wall, and then they've got some waterproof barrier, weatherproof barrier over top of that. We will go and scribe on some boards that then we can put the siding on top of. That leaves a little gap behind it, just like we would have with stone or brick, which allows any water that gets behind it to run down and dry out. So stopping water getting behind exterior facades is impossible. It's always going to happen. It's about letting it dry out. So it's when water gets trapped that can cause rot, mold, things of that nature. So the goal is to always set things up so it can dry out. And we'll go into that when we talk about masonry walls here in a second. So let's talk about how we set up foundations for different siding materials. When we are doing stucco or siding, the material is thin and is essentially going, right up against the exterior sheathing, and then just hangs either flush or just a little bit over the edge of the foundation. We don't need to do anything special with the foundation because it's a thin material. And so the framers, when they come in, a section like this that had stucco on it, the framers are putting the stud walls almost right out to the edge of the foundation. Then this stucco just goes down until where we see right there, it runs a little bit kind of flush and even a little past the edge of the foundation. When water hits it, it's just running straight down. Nothing is going back towards the inside of the house. Now, when we get to an area that's going to have real stone, real brick, we're talking about material that is thick, about 4 inches thick on average. And so we create what's called a brick ledge. Let me turn the camera around here. That is a brick ledge. So what's been done is there's a section of the foundation that's about 5.5 inches wide that is actually set a little bit lower than what we call the finished floor. So the finished floor is the section inside of the house you're walking on. This drops down a little bit so that any water that were to get behind it doesn't go into the house. And then when all the brick and stone's done, there will be little weep holes in them so that water can get out and can dry. So this is what all the brick and stone sits on. We use something called brick ties, which are little metal pieces that are nailed to the sheathing and help hold the brick in place. That's how the foundations are done. So foundations are set up a little bit differently for when you're going to have real brick or stone versus siding or stucco. I've even seen cases where people have set up a brick ledge because they were going to have stone on an exterior, decided they wanted siding or something, and they're left with this brick ledge. Those could be kind of painted, stuccoed, things like that to make them look good. But the brick ledge is always going to be there to set all that masonry material on. And then what you end up with is a gap between the back of that masonry material and the sheathing itself. Okay, I've talked about siding materials. Now let's talk about masonry, the other category of exterior facades. There's several things that fall into the masonry category. You've got your brick, your real stone, your stucco, and your veneer stone. So I'm going to start with stucco because I've got some right behind me right now. Stucco is a masonry material. It is a cement. When you're using real stucco, which we are, meaning this is a cement material. There is something called ephes, which is foam, and that still gets used sometimes for decorative, areas around windows, kind of the bands that you see, but those are sitting on top of the real cement stucco. So there was an issue 20 years ago when people were doing homes out of that. They had some water problems and everything. We do use real, what's called 3-coat stucco on our houses. So it starts with the guys coming in, and on this material behind me, they put this over the zip wall, and then they put something called a lath over top of that. Lath can be metal, it can be synthetic. They are materials that are put on the wall that allow them to smear the concrete on. They do it in 3 coats. The first coat is the kind of heavy cement coat that is smeared on that lath. This house, I think they've covered all the lath on it. I'll see if I can find a shot and put it up on the screen. Then they come back with 2 more coats, the final coats having the texture and color in them. So with stucco, you can paint it, but we always do the integrated color. So we have our customers decide what color they like, what texture style they like, and then that is integrated into the color that's put on the house. That's more durable than just painting it. So we always use the integrated color. We can color match any color. We tend to use Sherwin-Williams paint, so we can color match any Sherwin-Williams color. I'm gonna walk over here, and behind me is actually where we did, believe it or not, these are the same color, but they are different textures, 3 different textures here. And so the bottom one doesn't look like the same color, but they're telling me it is. I think they went with the center color here. And so this was a facade that we did for them to be able to pick out the both the color and the texture of the stucco. Behind me is a great example of stucco applications where we can see everything from the zip wall sheathing that's at the back and everything they're putting on top of that. The green board is the zip wall sheathing. Then we've got some black weather barrier on top of that. Then the lath that we see there. So here's a good spot right there. Zip, black WRB, lath material, scratch coat cement on top of that, and then you see another layer of the stucco they have on top of that. So that kind of shows you how the stucco facade is applied to a house. So talking about brick ledges, this is actually a situation where we have stone and stucco. So if you can see behind me here, the black part is where the stone is going to go up to. We're basically going to have a kind of a waist-high stone section on this house with stone that will go around the windows. And so the stucco stops. The stone will have a cap type of piece on it, so it's flush and looks good. And so this is just a situation where we've got a combination of stone down low, stucco up high. You see this a lot of times with stone and brick. When we're talking about stucco, what is my opinion of it as far as durability, things of that nature? Well, again, we use the integrated color, so it won't need to be repainted. It will last for a long time. The knock on stucco over the years is there have been cases where there were water issues because it's right up against the sheathing. If the water can't get out, then it can sit and has caused rotting and things like that. We go to a lot of lengths with what we do with everything from rain screens, the zip wall sheathing, to prevent any of those kind of water issues. So if that's pulled out of the equation, I think stucco is a great product. It is a masonry product, so it is very durable. It is not as durable as real stone, real brick. And so I had a situation on a house I built where the utility company was putting the electric line up to the house. They bumped it with their mini excavator and they kind of put a big divot in it. The downside of stucco is that you can do that. You could throw a baseball 70 miles an hour at real stone and it probably won't do anything. If you did that at stucco, it may compress it and cause a little bit of a dimple or something like that. So it's not entirely impact resistant. It will handle most impacts, things like hail and whatnot. But if that were to happen, you could damage it. The plus is it's very easy to come back and reskim it all and fix it. The only thing is, much like a painted wall, if you came back 5 years later and you fixed a spot, the color will probably not match perfectly, so you may need to do a whole wall section and stop it at the corners. So stucco has become really popular again here in Texas. We went years without a lot of people doing it, and now it is something I'm putting on more and more homes. It does allow certain architectural styles. There are, modern homes, contemporary homes, Mediterranean, Spanish. There are a lot of things that use stucco, and so it does allow us to get different types of looks. You can have a completely modern home with a stucco exterior and a flat roof and all this kind of thing, and it looks great. And then you can have a Spanish house with stucco and arched windows and doors and tile roofs. It's still stucco on the main facade areas, but you can use it to work with different types of architectural styles, which is really nice. I think stucco is a great product. A couple things related to durability, that it isn't as good as real brick and stone, which I'm going to get to now. What is my favorite exterior facade? Well, it's real stone and real brick. They are two different products. Of course, we all know they are two different products. They look different. Okay, let's talk about exterior stone. Real stone, which is roughly 4 inches thick and is quarried out of the ground, potentially chopped, sawn, whatever they want to do to give the type of selection pieces that you want. You see some here behind me. This is looters. It's called looter stone. So they quarry this stuff. They then chop it. This is a chop where you've got several different pieces that are different sizes, but they're all kind of squared off, more symmetrical. You see random stone a lot, where it comes out in all different shapes and sizes. They can do sawn stone, where they saw the face of it. And when you get into that type of material, it's going to get more expensive. Real stone is the most durable product you can put on a house. It will literally, over time, never change color. Maybe it's put on a little dirty and the weather kind of wears a little bit of that built-in dirt off of it if you haven't power washed it, but it will never actually change color. It won't fade like a stained material, or it won't fade like a paint material. It's also very, durable. You could, again, throw a baseball at 100 miles an hour against it if you wanted, and nothing would probably happen to it. So stone will last forever. The only thing you can't guarantee will last forever is the style and the look. So we do see homes later where people paint stone, they paint brick. But from a durability standpoint, stone is fantastic. Stone is also very expensive to put on a house, not so much for the material cost, but for the labor. So go pick up one of these big pieces right here, and even though they don't look physically that big, that piece probably weighs 30 pounds or more. And so it's a very heavy product to work with. There's a lot of cutting involved when they have to get these pieces to fit on a house properly. And so stone just comes with a high labor cost. I've joked, there are reasons you don't see a lot of completely stoned houses. Because it's a very expensive facade. I think for a lot of people too, it's a little too much when there's stone over a whole entire house. I've seen them, they look great. It just depends on the kind of stone in the house. But it is expensive, and that is the reason you don't see all stone houses most of the time. Generally, you're going to see stone used as an accent in certain places, like we're doing on this house, and but not everywhere. So that is stone. There are a couple types of stone. I'm going to get to what is veneer stone in a minute, but real stone is one of my two favorite exterior masonry facades. The other is brick. Okay, so let's talk about brick. This house has none. Actually, this house was slated to have a lot of brick on it, and it all got changed to stucco. So this house is primarily stone and stucco. But brick is very similar to stone. It is not a natural product. Brick is manufactured, but it is still a masonry product. So much like stone, extremely durable. We have all seen brick that's been on buildings for 100, 200, 300 years, still looks good, right? Again, the only issue with brick could be taste may change over the years. You've probably seen a lot of homes that had red brick on them have since been painted white and things like that. That's taste changing, but the brick itself still looked like it did when it was put up. So from a durability standpoint, brick is great. It is also less expensive. So I talked a little bit about stone being an expensive product to put on a house because of the labor cost. Brick is much simpler. I mean, you think about brick, it's all modular and it's roughly the same size. It is laid on top of itself in a brick lay pattern. It is a much lighter, not when you grab a whole bunch of brick, but one at a time, and how the masons have to handle that. It is lighter and easier to work with. And they're not having to cut a lot of it. So brick is a less expensive product to put on an exterior facade. It, generally speaking, can have a bit of a variance though from product. You could buy brick, you're generally buying brick by the thousand, you're paying by the thousand. So you can have a brick that may cost $325 $1,000, and you may have a brick that costs you $550 $1,000. So depending, much like buying flooring or countertops, depending on the price of the material, how much you're going to spend on a brick facade will change. But it's a fairly economical facade for a product that is super durable, will last forever. Now, when we're talking about brick and stone, I'll show a video taking of the side here where we've got the brick ledge, we've got a gap behind brick and stone. All masonry is porous, so water will get behind it. You can't really stop the water from getting behind it. For the most part, it should be minor amounts of water, but you can have mortar fall out in sections. And imagine we're standing here and we have a 65-mile-an-hour windstorm that's blowing rain against a wall. If there's any little openings in the mortar, the water can get behind it. But that's why we do what we do with the waterproof barriers on the homes, and then there is a gap between the stone and the brick and the back of that house sheathing that does allow the water to go down, go out the weep holes, and dry out. The reality is you're never going to stop water from getting behind facades, but allowing it to dry out is the key. So are there any negatives to brick and stone for exterior facades? Not really. You can have the issue of, as I mentioned, where, hey, maybe the style goes out of date. And that certainly has happened, and you see a lot of old homes where a certain style of brick was in style, or stone. It's not anymore. People paint them, things like that. Again, it's super durable, so no issues there. One of the biggest things were to be if you had an issue later down the road. Let's say you have somebody building a pool, and I don't know, the excavator hits the house or something and causes a real issue, breaks some of the brick off, and you need to re-brick a section of wall. You will not be able to match that brick. And that is the one downside of coming back and adding brick later. You normally never have to do that, but in a strange case where something happens, or you're adding on something of that nature, you will never get brick to match what's already there. Even if they're still making that brick, let's say it's Acme brick and we're using selection, Oakmont. Don't even know if that's a real selection, but we'll say it is. You go and buy some more Oakmont. It is each lot or run of that brick will always have a slight difference, because that's just the nature of things like brick, tile. You can never get, even though the selection is the same, it will look a little different when you put the new die lot up next to the old, right? So that is and that's a minor thing. We usually have some brick left over, and I'll suggest to people to hold on to a few of them. But that's about the only real negative to brick and stone from a standpoint of, durability or issues. There really are none. So the last type of facade I'll talk about, we are doing it on another job, and once we start doing that, I'll shoot a video on it. We don't have any on this house, but is what is called veneer stone, which is a product that is usually man-made. They use real stone, concrete, things like that in it, but it is the thin material, usually 1.5 inches to 2 inches thick. The interesting thing about it is, unlike what we are doing here, where we've got the brick ledge, show it behind me here, the brick ledge that all this stone sits on, that does not sit on a brick ledge. That is almost like stucco. They put a lath on the walls, and they use a mortar material to place that stuff on the wall, almost like you'd do tile. And so you've been seeing that type of brick for years. It's used a lot in commercial, but it is a thin material. It's still heavy, but it's sold in pieces. It comes with corners, and it's meant to be essentially stuck to the walls of the house. So we aren't doing those kind of brick ledges. That can be an interesting product for some of the options out there. You'll see a lot of veneer stones where they have all kinds of cool ledge stone looks and all kinds of things that are just hard to do with real stone. So veneer stone by companies like Coronado or popular products, and I will show that on the other house we're doing. Again, we don't have it on this one, but that's really the last type of masonry exterior. Again, like a stucco, that does go up against the sheathing itself. So with that product, you just want to make sure that you're set up to be able to drain behind it when moisture gets behind a veneer stone. You know, I'm talking about all these facades, siding and masonry, and one thing I didn't talk about is there are some other types of facades. Right here, I am standing in front of a metal building. This is the huge party barn we are doing on this house. Let me walk through here. So you can do metal exteriors on houses, metal exterior facades. They sell different products. Some look like wood, but are metal. This is what we call R panel. So this is what's typical with a metal building. It's got kind of ridges that stick out. And there are different types of products that can be put on houses like this also. You will sometimes see it on very contemporary and modern homes. In the typical Texas traditional homes we build, we never use that product. But you can see behind me the house with stone and stucco. And then here is our huge party barn that is in process. Guys, I hope this video about exterior facades was helpful. You may be wanting to build a new home and wondering what type of exterior product to use. You may be upgrading, remodeling, renovating a house that you're in now. And so all the products I've talked about have their place depending on what you want a house to look like and what you're looking for regarding things like maintenance and durability. So I hope this video helps. Appreciate you guys watching.